Hello from Southern Ontario. It's August 8th today here in Canada. So let's look back a few decades. Well, we'll start in the 60s with, the fear-mongering of the climate crisis. In the 60s, they told us we were going to run out of oil. All petroleum products would be gone in 10 years. Well, this might not sound like a climate thing necessarily, but I'll get to that in a second. Yeah, they said, it was going to run out in 10 years. Well, it didn't. We're still using it. Like 60, 70 years later? 60 years later. Anyways, there's a bit of a hangover into that in the 70s. You might remember the OPEC oil crisis. You'd think in North America we'd have learned to not be oil dependent upon other people, but, well, we didn't learn that. We did learn to embrace small cars in the early 70s. Remember the Vega? How about the Ford Pinto? Yeah, they're the ones who caught fire. Not at the rate that EVs catch fire. In the Vega, a burly fireman with a bladder full of bud could extinguish the Pinto. Whereas an EV, nobody can put it out. Entire fire brigade can't put it out. Bladders and truck and everything. And the Pinto didn't make enough toxic off-gassing and nasties, to make sure an entire small town, the residents wouldn't be leaving any footprints ever again, carbon or otherwise. Anyways, in the 70s, what was it? Oh, an ice age was coming. Yeah, images of, a couple of people in parkas on top of the Empire State Building looking down at the glacier, where we were to presume the rest of us were preserved as frozen fossils for future archaeologists. Well, that didn't happen. In the 80s, it was acid rain. Everything on the planet was going to be dissolved by acid rain into something like Darwin's primordial soup. Primordial soup? Is that how you pronounce it? Anyways, their building in the background. Yeah, that one there. Where? There. That was around in the 60s. The acid rain didn't dissolve it, so acid rain in the 80s didn't, turned out to be a bit of a bust for them. Oh, in the 90s, the ozone layer. There's a hole in the ozone layer. The frogs were getting sunburned, and it spawned a whole new industry, sunscreen. Instead of wearing hats like our ancestors did, everybody slathered sunscreen on themselves. To this day, you read the ingredients on that stuff, just buy a hat. No. And what is the hole still in the ozone, or did it fill itself with cow farts? What happened to the hole in the ozone? I don't know. Maybe it never really was there. Maybe it went away. I don't know. In the 2000s, the ice caps were melting, and like the only people who were going to survive are like Kevin Costner and the crew from Waterworld or something. Well, turns out they're not melting. In fact, the polar ice up there, the scientists were up there recently, measured it's the same as it was in the 60s. 23 years later, since they told us it was going to melt and we'd all be water-worlded. Didn't happen. So don't worry, if you haven't made it to visit Plymouth Rock, where the pilgrims landed and discovered that turkey tastes delicious. Oh, maybe I shouldn't speak of erky-tays. They might decide to tell us turkey farts are knocking the planet off its axis, not just cow farts. Ixnay on the erky-tay. But yeah, Plymouth Rock is still there, It's the water hasn't submerged. It's had 23 years but no. And the elitists are still buying oceanfront property. So should you be worried? I mean, they want us to be worried. They want us to be, well, just about terrified, because the climate's now boiling. It's not just like a crisis, it's actually boiling. I kind of got a vest on today. Well, should you be scared? Yeah, you should be scared. You should be terrified. You should be terrified. There's enough people out there who haven't learned over the last 3 years. They have an agenda. Are there enough people out there who haven't learned, are still not capable of critical thinking, and realize that this is about as real as what their agenda was in 2020? So yeah, be very worried, and don't slather sunscreen on your children, please.